Did the volleyball team fall short this season? Will the women's soccer team make up for it? And how is it that we are already almost finished with another semester in this COVID world? We don't have the answer for that, but keep it here for the best debates in Quinnipiac athletics. Welcome to Studio 125. I'm your host, Katie O'Keefe, and tonight's show features some of Q30's best. Kevin Higgins and that other guy that's over there, I forget his name, but I think it's Tom Krasnowski. Tom, you're one of my good friends. You know that's just the friendship we have, right?
Gotta be honest, Katie, you rattled me this time. But that said, it's go time for the show, and we're gonna bring it.
Certainly excited.
Nonetheless, it's always entertaining to watch you two debate, so who better to do it in front of than a live audience? Let's take it right to volleyball. The team hung on long enough to take the last seed in the MAC tournament last week, but they lost in their first game there. This is in comparison to last year's postseason run where they made it all the way to the championship against Fairfield, no less. Quinnipiac did lose that game 3-1, and actually a couple weeks ago, one of our analysts, Jonathan Banks, predicted a very different post-run season this year. Let's take a look at it.
And my hot take, if you will, is that they will finish second and they will win the MAC tournament. Now, this is a hot take. It doesn't mean I necessarily believe it will be true. They were the 6th seed last year going into the MAC playoffs. Then they got to the championship. They lost to Fairfield, but they have Maggie Baker. I believe she had 19 kills in game 1 today against Manhattan. You have Gabby Horman and you have Morgan Sherwin. That's a really good trio. And finish second in the regular season, not first, but get back to the championship and win. I really like what Kyle Robinson's doing with that era.
So, Tom, do you think this year's expectations were too high?
I think Jonathan's expectations were too high. I think that this team in the MAC it's a good team. Like, they're on their way up, like Jonathan mentioned. I think expecting them to finish second and go to the MAC championship for a second straight year was a bit of an oversell, to be quite honest. That's not to diminish what this team has done. They've improved their record again. They're on the right track. You get more recruits coming from Kyle Robinson. They had some good ones this year. It takes time to build in mid-majors. When Quinnipiac men's basketball, first year, they made it to the semifinals, haven't made it back since. St. Lawrence and ECAC hockey, they had an abysmal year last year. Now they're conference champions. It takes time to build. Just because Quinnipiac beat some of the elites last year in games, it means they can compete with them. It doesn't necessarily mean they're right at their level in the second year. I agree with Jonathan that I like their foundation, but I think that the expectations might have been a touch high coming into this season. I don't feel disappointed about this team.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you there, Tom. And I do think the expectations were a little high and probably unfairly so after last year's run. I think everybody kind of got swept up, myself included, into thinking that maybe this was just not an aberration. This is still a very solid team. The reality of the situation is that they were a 6th seed last year, a 7th seed this year. Right now, they're just middle of the pack in the MAC, and there are so many brighter days ahead for this program. Kyle Robinson and co are doing such a good job in building it back up and so quickly. But looking forward, the youth of this team is probably going to shine through. Morgan Sherwin and Gabby Horman were 2 of only 3 seniors on this team. And while they're going to miss their contributions, that tells you just how much strong and younger players there are in this program for years to come. Rome wasn't built in a day. Neither was the Quinnipiac volleyball program. There will be brighter days ahead.
Yeah, Kevin, future's bright for this team. Lexi Morris led the team in blocks as a first year. Ariana Diaz does both offense and defense. Maggie Baker led them in kills. They're all coming back, and they're all very young still. Baker's going to her senior year. They got a bright future ahead. I still think this team has a bright future.
Agreed.
Definitely a bright future ahead, and Kevin, you touched on this a little bit, but let's talk about it more. Did a shortened season hurt them? I mean, what do you make of this season?
I would say that a shortened season certainly hurt Quinnipiac, but it hurt everybody in the MAC. It wasn't just Quinnipiac dealing with this type of season. And I guarantee you, Tom, if you ask any player or coach on Quinnipiac's volleyball team, they will tell you that a shortened season is not an excuse. Obviously, not the way you want to go about it. Gives you less time to gel and maybe work out the kinks in your game, but it was the same for everyone. And some teams had it even worse. Fairfield didn't even get to compete in the MAC tournament. So at the end of the day, it stunk to have a shortened season, but everybody dealt with it, and it could have been a little worse in my opinion.
Having said that, Kevin, I really do think the shortened season hit Quinnipiac particularly hard this year. 7 regular season games is the fewest of any team that did finish its season. And although the expectations were a little high, this team also had a very difficult strength of schedule. And the shortened season plays a part in this. They played 4 of their 7 games against the top 2 teams in the league. They actually went 2-2 against those teams, Fairfield and Canisius. They didn't play a single game against a team lower than them in the final standings. The point here is their strength of schedule is very hard. Over a full season, they'd have some more cookies against the Marists and the Siennas of the world. And Quinnipiac being on the come-up, would have been able to win those games and maybe get a higher seed. So just based on the strength of schedule, I feel like that hurt them a little bit there. Not getting the chance to face some of the lighter teams. They held their own. They more than held their own against the good teams, and I think with more games played, you would have seen a better result.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for trial by fire and also just being able to play teams that you can beat and maybe work out some strategies against. So again, shortened season did hurt, especially as you mentioned, against some tougher opponents, but everyone was pretty much around, in my opinion, that same type of situation.
A tougher schedule makes you a tougher team, right? Now let's go to the Quinnipiac baseball team. They were swept by Niagara this weekend, and for more on their slow start, we go to our in-house baseball expert, Stephen Pappas, for more.
Quinnipiac baseball coming off a 4-game sweep at the hands of Niagara. It drops Quinnipiac to 2-10 this season, and for Quinnipiac, they've had some struggles, not necessarily offensively, but the pitching has been a real issue for Quinnipiac this year. Not named Brandon Garcia, the ERA of the staff, the starting staff, is sitting at 6.75, with the walk rate not too bad at 4.15. Where it really becomes an issue is the relief pitchers. The relief pitchers are sitting at a 7.91 ERA. Yes, 7.91 ERA. They're walking 6.5 batters per 9 innings. The team itself is 2-3 when leading after 6 innings, so clearly the relief pitching is not getting the job done. The same goes when the starter gets past the 5th inning. They are 1-3 as a team. They are being outscored 25-10 in the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings, and then the 5th, 6th, and 7th, they're being outscored 33-15, and you got to look at that for the 7-inning games that we've seen so far this season in the doubleheaders. They're 0 for 2 in save opportunities, and they've retired the first batter just 9 out of 21 times for a 42% there. Biggest issue for Quinnipiac in their 2-10 start has to be their bullpen.
Stephen mentioned it there, but the team is off to a slow start this year, no doubt. Right now, they're sitting at a 2-10 record. Their only wins on Monmouth and Ryder. So what is it about this team? Is it the offense, the defense, or the pitching for the cause of this, Tom? What is it?
Well, it's a combination, and pitching is a big part of it, Katie. As Steve mentioned some of those stats, the team's pitching has been a disaster this year. Let's just not sugarcoat it. And last year, the results weren't great in the part of the season they played, and we could blame that they were playing some tough non-conference opponents. That's part of the schedule every year. At least Christian Nicolosi was still good. This year, though, there's no excuse. You're playing MAC teams. You're playing Niagara and Ryder, who were in the bottom half of the conference last year anyhow. They lost 7 of 8 games against them. The only pitcher we can't pick on is Brandon Garcia. Everyone else, no one else has an ERA below 4 or a whip below 1.4. That means they're allowing at least 1.5 base runners per inning, every other pitcher. There's just, the pitching has been bad for this team, and they're not truly this poor. I mean, surely it must just be a slow start. I don't know what the cause of it is, but you just can't win ball games when they've hit 27 batters in 12 games, and they've walked 16 more batters than their opponents. It's just too many free passes.
Now, Tom, you're riding a slippery slope here. I sat in that same spot you did 2 years ago and said that Quinnipiac pitching will prevent them from winning a MAC title, and then staff-wide they went on a terrific run, pitched their brains out, and won the MAC championship. So I will not make a second mistake in doubting John Delaney's pitching staff. But as you mentioned, it has been rough to start this year, and it's a little more troubling for that specific reason you said, that it's just MAC opponents right now. Again, nobody on this team who has thrown 10 innings has an ERA under 4, besides Brandon Garcia, who, as we mentioned. And you mentioned that hopefully down the stretch for this team, they can pick it up. 3 guys in my mind are having uncharacteristic starts. Bubba Carrera, Blake Dakar, Colin Donnelly. We have seen these guys perform before, especially Colin Donnelly on the biggest stages, quite literally in the sport. And I guess what's the most frustrating part probably for this team is it's almost wasting such a good offensive start. Right now the team's batting about 270, OPS around 150. Evan Volgamore, Dylan Lutz, Andre Marrero are doing disgusting things to baseballs right now. Evan Volgamore has a slugging percentage of over 600.
And very impressive.
Yeah, and all 3 of those guys I mentioned all have OPSs of 900 plus. So it's tough to have a slow start to the pitching year, but it compounds it when you're hitting so well and you almost feel like you're wasting these opportunities to win games.
You know what? One more point, too, on the pitching. They're not getting much help from their fielders, to be honest. And if Quinnipiac baseball is listening, they know they have to clean it up. Particularly, they've made 19 errors in 12 games. The catching has been a sore spot as well. 7 pass balls in 12 games, and opponents have stolen 18 out of 19 bases in 12 games. And we know Quinnipiac is a better defensive team than this because there's a reason Colton Bender was nominated for the Posey Award. They are better than this. They've proven it year after year. Right now, though, everything that can go wrong has go wrong. They're going to have to clean that up because when you're allowing free base runners, you're also making it tougher on that pitching, which is already struggling.
Exactly, and I wouldn't press the panic button just yet on this team. Again, we're so early in, and it's been a sluggish start for what we've seen as an elite program in this conference. But as Steve said in the package, and as we've discussed ad nauseum here, that pitching and especially that bullpen has to tighten things up and win some games for this team.
Yeah. Well, baseball is the ultimate sport where small sample sizes really don't matter because you play such a long season. They got a lot of games to make this up, a lot of season left to go.
On the field next door, the softball team has also had a slow start to their season. And, just by watching this team, we know that first year Julia Wieste is on the mound for most of these games. Kevin, it's coming to you. Do you think only having one strong option for a pitcher is problematic?
I mean, it kind of has to be, right, Katie? But at the same time, I think Quinnipiac softball was just put in such a brutal position to succeed this year. Hillary Smith is only really coaching her second full year because it was technically her second year last year, but we know what a mess happened there with the pandemic. 16 of the 21 players on this roster are either first years or sophomores. And quite honestly, I think we can consider them all as first years because those sophomores really didn't get to play last year. So as you mentioned, Katie, Julia Wieste is trying her best out there, but she's just a first year herself, and the California native is going through some very natural growing pains in the circle. I mean, it's a very different game from high school to college softball, and so that inflated 8.34 ERA as a result. They've tried some other arms in the bullpen. They haven't pitched that often. But yes, I would say that when you're really only throwing one young lady out there to just continue to just wear out her arm every game and pitch all these innings, I do not think it bodes well.
Yeah, I don't think this exactly was according to plan for Quinnipiac softball. Wieste has thrown 75% of the innings this year, and again, I don't think that was according to plan. Around the MAC, the top four teams, Monmouth, their top two starters are splitting innings 60-40. Iona has their two splitting 60-40. Ryder has at least four pitchers with at least 10 innings this year. An effective split is necessary. We saw this in past years with Casey Herzog and Abby Long and Kendall Brundrett. They have a couple other options that haven't pitched in a while. I'm not sure what their availability is. Tiffany Kennedy Cummings, she was last year's workhorse. She started opening day. Lala Pasquale was the number 2 starter last year. She hasn't played this season. Again, I'm not sure about their availability, but that has put more pressure on Wieste. She's had some walks issues, but she's a first year. It's not an indictment on her. I think it's more so the fact that she's had to pitch 75% of the innings in her first year. It's tough for anybody, and I don't think, like I said again, I don't think this was according to plan for QU softball. They've had an unlucky season.
I also think it's probably a little unfair to just label this as a pitching problem now. The Bobcats are batting over 100 points lower, OPS over 300 points lower. Besides Catherine Rodriguez, who's gone full Tony Gwynn out there this year, this offense has underperformed too. So when you have an underperforming offense and a pitching staff, or just one pitcher pretty much, no one else has thrown over 9 innings, that's going out there with not a lot of support, it's always going to be tough.
Tom, you really summed it up there that it's really just tough for everybody right now. But right now it's time for a short commercial break, but when we come back, Kevin and Tom will talk lacrosse and soccer. Both soccer teams have their tournament play just around the corner. We'll be right back.
Multiple studies have shown that marijuana can slow both driver reaction and response time, which can be really dangerous. He's here. He's here. Wait. What? I can't drive. Why? My. Oh.
I know what you're thinking. I need a job. I need a new career.
Well, I've been there.
I've been there.
I've been there. I wasn't happy with what I was doing.
After high school, I didn't have a plan.
I just wanted to start working. I got laid off twice, but you gotta keep going.
You just need the right skills. Find an apprenticeship.
I found a 2-year IT program.
I found a medical course online.
I'm now a consultant in the tech space.
You have more options than you think. You can do this.
You will find something.
You will find something new.
What do you think you're doing, Kevin?
Was just gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
Like hearing voices?
Like your text-to-emoji ratio?
Oh man, The selfies.
Selfie.
Nailed it.
We all have warning signs that let us know that we're probably not okay to drive. Mine is pretending to be your subconscious.
Craig, come on, man. Let's split a ride home.
Welcome back, and thanks for sticking with us. Let's now look at the men's soccer team. The team won yesterday against Iona, bringing their record to 4-1. They have one more regular season game left, playing Manhattan on Thursday. So Kevin, how do you think the postseason will play out this year?
All right, here's my hot take, Tom. Quinnipiac men's soccer wins the MAC title. And I did not think that I was going to say that just the first season after Eamon Whalen, one of the greatest players and goal scorers in the history of this Quinnipiac program. But it has really been a team effort in stepping up to Phil Whalen's absence. The Bobcats have 4 multi-goal scorers in just 5 games that they've played, with Brog Awesome leading the way. He has 8 points. David Bercedo, Alex Holly, and Tomas Mikula all have 4+ points each. And assuming Jared Mazzola is healthy in net, he will continue to be one of the most confident and energetic and best keepers in the conference. Niagara and St. Peter's are some tough competitions. Quinnipiac has split the matchups this year with a loss, their sole loss coming to St. Peter's in overtime. But I do think that this team, probably pound for pound, I think they're going to do it. I think Eric DaCosta, this group, finally gets over the hump and wins that first MAC title since their first year in the MAC back in 2013.
They could, for sure. I think their toughest test is going to come with that same team that stood them up last time in Ryder. And that leads into my men's soccer hot take, and that's that Jared Mazzola is the best goalie in the MAC right now. I think he was on path for this. He came in as a transfer from VCU, had that amazing sophomore year. He stole the job from Chris Yakovidis, backstopped them to the MAC title game. Remember that legendary shootout against Marist? He took a slight step back last year, still started every game. The team was out in the first round. This year, I think he's the biggest reason why they're back in first place. You know I love goaltending. Only 2 goalies have a higher save percentage than Mazzola or lower goals against. That's Josh Savoni of Niagara and Pablo Giantis of Ryder. Now, Savoni does not have the clutch track record that Mazzola has, doesn't have the kicking ability he has that can start plays from behind, underrated part of Mazzola's game. He certainly doesn't have the defense that Mazzola has in front of him either. In terms of Ryder, again, Pablo Gatinois was the guy who did stop Mazzola finally in that championship game. But I have a feeling if they met again, that finally now Mazzola will conquer that demon and get over him. Because Mazzola he's bounced back in a big way. Gatinois is still a really good goalie. He's coming off a difficult year last year, but he's not allowed a goal so far in 3 games. Short season, tough sample size, but Gatinois is still really good. But Mazzola, his aggressiveness, his fearlessness, I think he's ready to conquer that demon. If he gets that second chance, he's been so good this year, I feel very confident he's the best goalie in the MAC.
They win in the MAC? Yes or no?
If he's the best goalie in the MAC, then they're absolutely winning.
You just said he's the best.
Then they're absolutely winning.
Okay, there you go. They're winning the MAC. Quinnipiac Soccer's winning the MAC.
All right, we're going to hold both of you to that. But now onto the women's side. They are setting themselves up for a strong tournament run. Right now, they are ranked second in the MAC standings, 1 step behind Siena, but 1 ahead of Monmouth. Tom, how do you think this team will get to the MAC championship? If they do, what could be the reason that they make it?
You know, soccer is a defensive-oriented game, but I'm going to go a little offense here because Rebecca Cook is the best individual player this team has had since Nadia Gill. We're going back now to our freshman year, Kevin. Mm-hmm. They have not had a scorer like Cook since that time. They've had a lot of good playmakers. They've had Selena Salas, I think, does a great job now setting up a scorer like Cook. She's top 5 in the MAC in goals, assists, points, shots, and shots on goal. She takes her shots. She also hits the net, and she finds the back of the net, too. The other middies now have a serious sniper to pass to. No one has scored more than 6 goals in a season since Gill has left. Cook is already at 3 in 5 games. The shortened season might make it tough to get to that 6 mark, but over the next full season, she's certainly going to get there. Just her first year, she's been so impressive. The 2-time MAC Rookie of the Week so far. I feel very confident that Cook is going to be the reason they get there, should they do it.
Tom, I think we might have shared notes here. I have the exact same reason. The first-year Dublin native just bursting onto the scene, and I agree with you. She is the best player that Quinnipiac has had individually since Nadia Gill, and Last year, Quinnipiac struggled in the goal scoring department. They scored multiple goals in just 7 of their 19 contests. And Rebecca Cook has, you mentioned all those stats. It would be ad nauseum for me to do it again. But she has really helped to just revitalize this offense. And if other teams, which they have, keyed in on her, it opens up the field for other weapons for this team, like a Selena Salas, like an Olivia Scott. So I completely agree with you, Tom. I think if this team does indeed find itself in the MAC championship game, that Rebecca Cook probably will be the most instrumental part of that puzzle.
I'll take one from our old friend MJ Baird. I'll yield to redundancy here.
Okay.
Switching now to the men's lacrosse team. They are just starting out their season, but from the stats, it looks like junior goalie Nick DiMuccio is doing all that he can to block shots. He just recorded 17 saves against Monmouth last week. So who should be stepping up on the offense here to help him out? Kevin, what do you think?
Well, look, it's a little early into this year, but just 3 games in, I think Will Abbott is probably the prime bounce-back candidate for this team. He both can and will, no pun intended, pick it up over the coming games. We know who Will Abbott is as a player at this point. He is a career over 2-point-per-game player at Quinnipiac. Him and Jake Tomsick have been an incredible duo for this program over the past few years. So Abbott, and he's only played 2 out of the team's 3 games, held off the score sheet against St. Bonaventure, which is an incredible rarity for him. Rebounded with a goal and 2 helpers against Monmouth. Again, Abbott's only played 2 games. The team has only played 3, so I don't want this to come off as too harsh, but it's only an 8-game season, Tom.
Right.
So you really do have to start off as strong as you can, guns blazing, if you want to get in a good playoff position. So Jake Tomsick has been Jake Tomsick, as I mentioned. He has 5 goals. Stephen Germain and Dylan Donnery have 5 goals, and 5 points and 3 goals respectively. Abbott should pick it back up in no time, but it's been a little concerning to see the slow start for his standards, of course.
I'd be confident that Will Abbott will pick it up, and I also know that Jake Tomsick has been holding his end of the bargain with 5 goals in 3 games. I'm going to go with some of the young guys who showed off last season in the partial season they played, but that's the point. It was just a wonky season for them. You wonder how they were going to develop. I'm talking about Jake Tellers and John DeLucia. Those 2 scored 16 goals in their 11 games last year. So far, they just have 4 goals in 6 games. The pace has gone down. They're shooting at a similar rate in terms of volume on the net. They're just not going in at the same rate. 4 goals in 6 games, that's 2 apiece. I think we need a little more from those 2, especially because Tomsick and Abbott, they're getting older at this point. They're still the best players on this team in terms of scoring, but they're on their way out. And if they're going to take that next step moving forward, Tellers and DeLucia are going to have to be guys there. It's a small sample size. I think QU men's lacrosse needs a little bit of more help from those young guys who showed off the depth last year. They're very impressive last season.
Agreed.
Now the women's lacrosse team is well past the halfway point of their season. Right now they are 3-5 in the MAC. They have 3 games left to play. So finishing at 500, would that be considered a successful season? Tom, what do you think?
It would be, Katie, because given the expectations for this team, it's been a long time since they've been at 500. It's been since 2013, since they were at 500 in conference, and since 2012 when they were at 500 overall. They're 3-5 right now. They have 3 games left. So they can't truly finish 500 per se. They're going to be 1 game over or 1 or 2 games under. But Manhattan is 2 of those games. They're winless. And Niagara is 5th. Quinnipiac is 6th. These are 3 winnable games for this team. And I actually think that this women's lacrosse team is looking to improve this year in some ways. Their goal scoring is up by 2 goals per game. They have that scoring depth that the men's team doesn't. Unfortunately, they don't have the goal keeping that the men's team has. It's almost like you could get a swap going on there. You'd have the perfect lacrosse team. I think it would be a success. I think it's doable for this team. It's a good step forward.
Do you know the last time Quinnipiac women's lacrosse finished above 500?
2013.
2000, yeah. Look at you. You did your research.
Well,
We're good at this
clearly
job.
you weren't listening to what I was saying.
Clearly I was not. Often don't. So Tanya Kodowitz has really done a pretty incredible job with this turnaround. And I think absolutely finishing 5. This program was in the depths of their conference for a very long time. Tanya Kodowitz has done a great job. 500 for me, and I think for the team, absolutely a win.
With that, let's take one more quick break, and when we come back, we'll have the game of the week for you, plus some final roars. Keep it here.
Maybe you can make retirement happen. After all, you made home ownership happen. Homeschooling yourself on loans, beefing up your credit score.
So I'm pre-approved.
You were like, yes! Sorry. Color coding listings, ticking boxes, and flushing every toilet in a 20-mile radius. Home sweet home. You aced house hunting. Now get the tips you need to get on track at aceyourretirement.org.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
When we adopt a shelter pet, we discover they're a unique mix of all kinds of things.
Come on, Jules, spot on this last one. There it is. Keep going with it. Leo.
They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love.
What do you think you're doing, Kevin?
Was just gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
Like hearing voices?
Like your text-to-emoji ratio?
Oh man, the selfies.
Selfie nailed it. We all have warning signs that let us know that we're probably not okay to drive. Mine is pretending to be your subconscious.
Craig, come on, man, let's split a ride home.
Welcome back, and thanks for sticking with us. For this week's QBSN Game of the Week, we take you right back to where we started tonight's show, with the Quinnipiac volleyball team. They battled Canisius in the quarterfinals of the MAC playoffs last week. The Bobcats came out firing, actually, taking the first set 25-22. Unfortunately, the good fortunes run ran out as the Bobcats dropped the next 3 sets. Maggie Baker led all players with 16 kills and posted her 5th double-double of the season, adding 18 digs. Unbelievable. Canisius eventually went on to lose in the MAC championship game to Ryder, 3-1. To close out the show, the best way we know how, Tom, start us off and let's hear your final roar.
The final roar, as Katie put it. I'm going to break the traditional mold here, reflect on what Bobcat Breakdown means to me here in my final show. It's the end of a journey here tonight, and me and Kevin, we've known each other since day one at QU. We've had many spirited arguments. I've lost count of the amount of shows I've done with Katie, making this a perfect lineup to close with. The Bobcat Breakdown is one of the best parts of my college experience. From my time as an associate producer in freshman year when I was just trying to get my feet wet, to running the Q30 Show of the Year with my good friend and co-executive producer Jonathan Banks in year 2, to seeing our former APs run the show the next year, to going undefeated in all my debates on the desk. Bobcat Breakdown was a staple of my time at Quinnipiac. I got the best of both worlds with this show. I made my best friends, laughed a ton, made an impressive water bottle trick shot, struck out Mike Riley, lost a foot race to Will Fowler, and made so many more memories that will last a lifetime, and all while advancing my career. It's surreal that this is the last time on the desk, but now it's closing time. Thank you, Bobcat Breakdown, for everything.
How do you make the most of college? Of course, you should make friends, have fun, pass your classes. But you should also push yourself to be the best person and worker that you can be. And that is precisely what student media has done for me. Through Q30 and the Quinnipiac Bobcat Sports Network, I've been afforded opportunities that a college kid could never even dream of. Calling live sports, trips across the country, what an unbelievable ride it's been. Thank you to every coach, athlete, and athletics personnel I've ever worked with. You each helped me grow as a journalist more than you'll ever know. And I'm sorry for anything stupid I've ever said about you, and I am specifically looking at you 2019 Quinnipiac baseball. Thank you to my friends here that I have made for life. As Tom mentioned, the man sitting next to me was my freshman year roommate. The woman sitting to my left I've known since my 2nd month of school. People like, as Tom mentioned, Jonathan and others, Liz Flynn, Will Fowler, Stephen Pappas, Jacob Resnick, Ryan Flaherty, and all those who came before me. You know who you are. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for letting me work with you, spend time with you, and most of all, being my family for Quinnipiac and beyond. These past 4 years have been the greatest thrill of my life, and I cannot wait for what's next.
Well, I can't ruin the vibe, so I'll have to say my goodbye as well, as much as I don't want to. So much has changed these last 4 years. I first walked into this suite not knowing people did this for a living. I didn't really have a clue about much then anyway, but turns out this stuff is pretty cool. It's exciting to think about where Q30 alum find themselves in the world. It's quite literally all over the map, and in all sports, sorts of jobs covering almost every part of the news. But before thinking about what's ahead for all of us, I love to think about how it all started. This is the place where I learned how basketball is played, I'll admit it. I became a women's basketball beat reporter my sophomore year, and it was for that sole purpose, to learn. This is the place, the same exact show actually, where I went on air for my first time. I interviewed a volleyball player, and for those 2 minutes on air, it gave me the tiniest glimpse of what this industry is like. Not to mention a certain someone also took my picture that night, and he still hangs around all these years later, but that's a story for another time. This is the place where I learned the ins and outs of producing a show, one that went on to become the best college sportscast in the country. This is the place where so much changed. It's funny, day by day, nothing changes, but then you look back and everything is different. That is definitely a wrap on tonight's show, but don't worry, it's not the last. You can catch Bobcat Breakdown Tuesday nights at 9:30, and you can follow the latest on Twitter at Q30 Sports and at QBSN. Thanks to the hardworking crew behind the set and tonight's talent, Tom and Kevin, it was a pleasure. It was another great show. So with that, have a good night.